Salve Omnibus. This video is meant as a sort of compendium to a video my friend Ben McLean recently made called Appeal to Authority is Not a Fallacy. It's an excellent video explaining how both appealing to an authority in an argument is not logically inconsistent, and that in the way the fallacy is defined, it's very clear it has an ideological bias attached to it. Essentially, climate change deniers and creationists cannot bring up scientists or experts that support their position, while their opponents are free to do so. And this made me remember a video I saw a while back that demonstrates the double standard so well I had to do something with it, and it's a perfect opportunity to attack another big-time atheist. So, for context, the video is from August 2015, and it has Bill Maher interviewing then-presidential candidate Rick Santorum on his views on climate change. By the end of this video, we'll have Rick Santorum, a devout Catholic, citing scientists, and Bill Maher, a devout atheist, citing the Pope to support his argument. Now, in the interest of being lazy, and to keep the focus of the video on this double standard, I have not looked into the sources cited by either party. And to further alleviate fears of bias, I will go right out and say that I do not know enough about climate change to know if it is man-made or not.
Now let's talk a little bit issues. I think that the two most important issues, the two questions, if I had just two questions for any politician, what are you going to do about climate change, and how are you going to get money out of politics? And and we're going to run into problems there, because I don't think you think climate change is a real problem.
So already, Bill is being biased here. He knows that Rick Santorum is against him on the issue of climate change, and from the way he phrased it, he basically asserted that these two issues are indisputable facts. So from the outset, Rick is being forced to argue against what's established as concrete facts. Bill even attached climate change to money in politics because it's something that everyone would agree with. So that, combined with the way the opening statement was phrased and the fact that Bill is on his own show surrounded by his fans, Rick is already disadvantaged.
And I'm not alone. I mean, the most recent survey.
You're not alone.
The most recent survey of climate scientists said about.
Interrupting your guest when he's directly addressing your point is a great way to run a talk show, Bill.
57% don't agree with the idea that 95% of the change in the climate is being caused by CO2.
Again?
There was a survey done of 1,800 scientists, and 57% said they don't buy off on the idea that CO2 is the knob that's turning the climate. There's hundreds.
Okay, so Rick has presented a perfectly logical argument here. He's citing a survey which showed that a majority of scientists don't believe man-made pollution is the primary factor in climate change. Rick, not being a scientist, is using what he believes is a strong case made by scientists to support his position. There's nothing illogical or fallacious here.
Rick, I don't know what ass you're pulling that out.
I'm not. I'll send you the survey.
Okay.
So now Bill, unable to provide counter-evidence, tries the tactic of belittling the argument and make Rick's assertion sound incredulous. Your argument challenges me, and I don't have counter-evidence, so I'm going to call it names.
It's 1,800 climate scientists. That's number one. Number two, the 97% figure that's thrown around, the head of the UN IPC said that number was pulled out of thin air. It was based on a survey of 77, not even 97 scientists responded to that survey. So let's talk about facts. And the fact is, lots of things cause climate change.
Okay, so now Rick follows his first point up with another citing of an expert. What he's actually doing here is quite smart. He knows the audience. He knows that a common statistic thrown around is that 97% of scientists say global warming is man-made, and he's citing a figure of scientific authority to demonstrate that that number is not accurate.
And then let's talk about another point. What are you going to do about it? And how do we? Let's assume.
What are you going to do about it?
The answer is, if you look at what the president has proposed, an 80% reduction in emissions, and the consequence of that to folks that I am running my campaign on, which are folks that are blue-collar Americans who are losing jobs to China, losing jobs to Mexico, because we have
ridiculous. There are twice as many jobs in solar as there are in coal now. You're living in the past.
No, but
I know that's your country, Pennsylvania. Coal.
Now, here's where Bill gets control of the debate. Rick is trying to say that policies aimed at reducing carbon emissions are damaging the economy and costing blue-collar people their jobs. And Bill counters this by stating that clean energy jobs are more available than coal. This undermines Rick's point that this is bad for the economy, even though Bill has no evidence to back this up and uses the current year as an argument for some reason.
country.
But it's not just coal, it's manufacturing. And it's, the president's about to propose a regulation on ozone that, according to the National Association of Manufacturing, will destroy the manufacturing economy in this country.
Well, it's already sort of destroyed.
Well, it is, because we have regulations that are overdone.
Because rich people send jobs overseas. All right,
they send jobs overseas because it's too expensive to manufacture.
But wait a
here
second.
because of climate, of other types of policies, including climate.
The Pope.
Now, Rick regains control despite being interrupted again by Bill Maher. He says that the policies affect not just the energy industry, but manufacturing as well. Then Bill tries to use the same tactic as money out of politics to argue from a fortified position. Everyone, especially everyone in his audience, will have a negative reaction to big business leaders. Bill tries to assert that this is why jobs are being shipped overseas, but it doesn't work. Rick has been running his campaign focusing on the working class, so he doesn't have to defend big business. And before Bill tries to quickly change the subject, Rick reasserts his position that the environmental regulations are costing American jobs. Unable to refute this, I guess Bill thinks appeal to authority is okay when he does it.
Made a very strong statement in support of my position on climate change, not yours. And your position, when you heard that, was, hey, let's leave the science to the scientists. Okay, first of all, you're not doing that. But second of all,
I am.
Rick is completely right here. Up to this point in the interview, his arguments against climate change come from scientists because he's smart enough not to argue about an issue he isn't informed on.
You're not, because 97% of all scientists believe...
Is this a bogus number?
It's so not a bogus number.
It's so a bogus
Okay,
number.
yours is, mine is, yours is, mine is. But...
Okay, so two things here. First, Rick has objectively made a better case when it comes to the 97% statistic. He brought up a scientific authority while Bill said it's true because he said so, and proceeds to engage in whatever this is in a desperate attempt to change the topic. Secondly, I think if you're going to be a good host, you should know what type of character your guest is. Obviously, Bill comes off as more unhinged and is trying to be funny for his audience, but he should know that Rick is a more reserved and serious person. Incidents like this make the interview and I think the guest feel incredibly awkward. Rick is trying to go along with it and not make a big deal, but I think he's probably pretty uncomfortable with this.
But what I want to ask you is, I mean, I'm not a Catholic. I'm an atheist. But I like the Pope better than you do, and I wouldn't.
Not true.
And I wouldn't. But wait a second. You're saying the Pope should stick.
Rick seems to be trying to turn this around here. Bill was trying to make a short jab at Santorum, and I don't think he meant for Rick to call this out. And when Rick is laughing and making light of a point, it comes off as genuine, whereas anytime Bill Maher does it, it comes off as incredibly smug.
To what he knows, and I find that so ridiculous. Because this is what I always say: so much of religion is arrogance masquerading as humility.
Again, here's another offhand comment that doesn't add to the conversation.
He's the vicar of Christ, your God. Shouldn't you have the humility to say, well, if the Pope thinks climate change is a problem, maybe I should? He's not just another guy.
I like how Bill Maher is trying to teach Rick Santorum about his own religion. Rick Santorum, the guy who's known for his socially conservative Catholic positions, and who was knighted by the Knights of Malta. And as a side note, this isn't how Catholicism works. Catholics don't have to do everything the Pope said. He isn't a god, and I wonder what Bill Maher would say Catholics should do if the Pope had a position he doesn't like, say, on abortion or gay marriage.
If you look at all the things the Pope said, which I hope you do, he put it in the context of trying to reach out to people who may not agree with him on a whole lot of other issues in order to try to open up some doors and open up a conversation, which he's obviously done. I mean, Al Gore's now saying he's going to become a Catholic because of this president. I mean, because of this Pope. Really? I mean, this is he did. He said, you know, I'm considering becoming Catholic because of Pope Francis. So I think he's trying to do something to break down some barriers, because if you look at previous popes, they've been pretty much, you know, consistent on all these things and what would be seen in the world as conservative positions. And he's trying to reach out and bring some other people in to look at.
So now, since the conversation's been derailed, Rick is using the opportunity to make Catholicism look good, and using Al Gore, someone who people automatically connect with climate change, as an example. And now Rick Santorum, by using the Pope on his side, is preventing Bill from using his own trump card. He's basically stolen the other side's talking point.
I know that a Pope, every time he speaks, he's not infallible. It's very rare.
Correct, once.
What if he said this thing about climate change that he said in the context where it is infallible? What if he did?
But he wouldn't.
What if he did?
He would not, because the Pope speaks about infallible things.
Frank, call me.
No, yeah. He would.
So now we're at the point where Bill has failed to make Rick look stupid because, let's face it, that's what Bill wanted to do here all along. Why else would he bring in someone who is diametrically opposed to him? Even worse, Rick is now using Bill's own position as a platform to promote Catholicism, and it's entirely Bill's fault for taking the conversation here. Now I guess as a last-ditch effort to make Rick look stupid, Bill tries to bait Rick on the issue of infallibility, and Rick is having none of it. So Bill had to end this with a stupid joke. I know his audience was on his side because they're always on his side, but I think objectively, Rick had a much stronger argument here. So I know this has been more of a breakdown of the interview than anything else, but to connect this back to the appeal to authority topic, the hypocrisy the left uses is really evident here. Rick cites authorities who disagree with Bill's position, so Bill just shouts them down without any evidence. Then immediately cites the Pope as an authority because he agrees with his position, and he thinks it will guilt Rick into accepting climate change because that's how Catholicism works. I think to wrap this up, I want to say that I really hate it when people will automatically accept or dismiss a person's arguments based on how they perceive them. And I'm curious to see what people will be more upset with, the fact that I criticized Bill Maher or used Rick Santorum as a positive example. Anyways, I hope this shows how leftists that people idealize are often guilty of being hypocritical and contradicting their own assertions such as appeal to authority. Diabana.
Wir wollen unseren alten Kaiser Wilhelm wieder. Wir wollen unseren alten Kaiser Wilhelm wieder. Aber den mit dem Bart, mit dem langen Bart. Aber den mit dem Bart, mit dem langen Bart. So schwärmten unsere Eltern von der guten alten Zeit. Sie liegt so fern und weit, die alte Kaiserzeit. Doch war sie wirklich besser, diese gute alte Zeit, als einst der Opa, die Oma hat wohl gefeit. Ja, mit Jagdgesang und mit Hörnerklang, rings um Fair Berlin, durch die Wälder ziehen. Ja, mit Jagdgesang und mit Hörnerklang, ritt die Oma mit dem Opa. Doch sie hielten an und küssten sich, sonst wären wir